Okay, so I originally had a different one, but then I was talking to my Lakers friend, and he gave me a trade, and I really liked it. It was OG Anunoby to the Lakers for those two picks that they're holding on to willingly, and Lonnie Walker, of course, whatever they need to do, add a second round and make the money work. But OG Anunoby, 24 years old, 3-and-D guy. I love what he can do. Toronto's not utilizing him. And I mean, those Laker picks are deadly, man. So I think Toronto should pull the trigger.
Absolutely. I personally, I will say that I have him getting traded to a different team later in the notes or the trades that I created. I'm glad that we were both on the same page and we know that OG Anunoby needs to get the fuck out of Toronto because he's a fourth option on a team that is ass. Like they're bad. So I agree to the extent. I don't know about the Lakers though. I don't ever like the idea of the Lakers getting more players because I mean I am an ex Celtics fan. I was until I was 8 years old, 9 years old, whatever after the 2009 season. And you are a current Celtics fan. Do you think that
But
makes
yeah,
the Celtics any better? I mean the Lakers.
I mean, yeah, with the addition of Hachimura, and like I said, they have no one for their future. What, Reeves? And he's even like 25, I think, 26. Like they have nobody to build around after LeBron and AD.
I do agree, especially because LeBron's beating time itself because he's a what is he 38 now, year 20, pulling some bullshit about to break the all-time record, which we will get into later. But I don't know. I like the idea because especially it does give you a younger guy. But the only pushback I would have, I guess, is the picks because I understand why they're holding on to him. I know LeBron, reshared the LA Rams thing that was like fuck them picks and said my kind of GM. What was that, a year ago? But
Yeah.
it's a little interesting to me because, like you said, they have no future. So eventually they got to be able to build a future, or else they're going to be stuck in the mess that Brooklyn has been stuck in the last couple of years, which is free agency. And can you get free agents to come to your team? But on the other end, of course, the Lakers are what is the third biggest market in all of basketball, maybe the second.
And yeah, I mean, although it hurts as a Celtics fan, and I don't want it to happen, it just made so much sense. Like, why would you give those picks up for Turner and Buddy Hield when you have a guy that's probably better than both of them?
I don't know. It's my second. And the trade that I wanted to offer up to you to see if you thought it was as good as I did is OG Anunoby and Juancho Hernan Gomez, both fucking Cruz, to New York, and not the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, I mean the New York Knicks, for Mitchell Robinson and Cam Reddish to Toronto. I will first add that the Knicks, how many minutes has Cam Reddish played for the Knicks in total? Maybe 75. I feel like I never see this man play in any Knicks game ever. So he's just for contracts. If Toronto wants to use them, use him, that is all on them. Because I don't think I've ever seen the Knicks use that man. But Toronto is out a center right at this exact moment. I think their starting center is who? Ken Birch? I didn't know he
Yeah,
existed until I was making the notes for this podcast. Like, Ken Birch, seriously? He's all right. I actually have heard of him. That was more to be exaggerative. He is all right, but obviously, wouldn't you rather have Mitchell Robinson, who is a 24-year-old, I believe, and an elite shot blocker? It seems like he's been in trade rumors since LeBron entered the league. The 12-year-old Mitchell Robinson was getting trade offers at that point. I have even his rookie year. They were like, maybe they should trade Mitchell Robinson because the Knicks don't use him either. And maybe that's a Tom Thibodeau thing. But the Knicks, he's injured right now. But as of the rest of his career, he's maybe played as many minutes as Cam Reddish. And that's obviously an exaggeration, but they don't use the dude. And it makes me mad because he's just that good. And then OG Anunoby to the Knicks. He is a perimeter wing defender and is a super solid offensive talent. He's averaging, if I remember from Sports Center with SVP the other night, he's averaging 17 points per game, 16.9, whatever. And he doesn't love being the fourth option on a team that is shitty. But the Knicks are a lot less shitty than they usually are. They might actually get a playoff spot this year. And he would be option 2A on the Knicks. And his 2A would be with RJ Barrett, whoever decides to go off that night. But RJ Barrett's inconsistent as shit. You also get a consistent scorer in OG Anunoby who actually does what he's supposed to do. And then the Juancho Hernangomez. He was mainly for contracts when I was putting this in the trade machine. But let's think about one thing. Hustle is a good-ass movie. If you haven't seen Hustle yet and you're listening to this, David, if you haven't seen Hustle, watch the fucking movie.
I saw it. Good one.
It is a good movie. And Juancho Hernangomez can act. He acts much better than Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was super solid in that movie, much better than LeBron or Michael Jordan ever were in either of their respective Space Jams. But Juancho was good. And if he was going to land another acting job while playing basketball, it's either in LA or New York. And he sure as hell ain't going to LA. I don't see a trade for that. I don't see him ever playing minutes in LA if he were to go to LA. So why not go to New York, where Broadway is there? They film a shit ton of movies in New York. So personally, I think that is probably the best trade the Knicks are able to give up assets for on the trade deadline. I mean, Jalen Brunson is obviously going to be your number one scorer. OG's not going to be the number one scorer on that team. But they're a good team that could use some re-weaponing, retooling, whatever the shit. What did I just say? Whatever the hell you want to call it. And I think, getting someone like OG Anunoby is going to help them out a lot. I mean, plus it's another wing defender, which they kind of lack. I don't know specifically the exact Knicks roster off the exact top of my head, but I can't think of a really solid wing defender besides Cam Reddish who plays for them. And, oh, wait, they don't use the dude. So, I don't know. I would love to hear how you feel about Cam Reddish and Mitchell Robinson for OG Anunoby and Bo fucking Cruz.
Okay, so for New York, I love the move for them. Like I said, they do have assets. Like I said, I think they're willing to trade D Rose as well. So Toronto wanted him too.
No, put him on the Mavs.
But Knicks have a lot of pieces that are good, like Grimes. I don't know. He's been very solid, quickly stepped up. Randall's there, and I think adding a guy like OG Anunoby would escalate them as well. For the Raptors, if we're talking about not utilizing point guards, they have a point guard they don't even touch when VanVleet sits, and that's Malachi Flynn, which I do see potential in Malachi Flynn. So if they're not using Malachi Flynn, I doubt they want to use Reddish. So I don't like it for Toronto, but I do like it for New York. And like I said, that's just preference. But I mean, I don't know where Cam Reddish would fit behind Fred VanVleet unless VanVleet is moved. But for New York, it would put them up there in the standings. I think they would be better than Heat, better than Bulls, and possibly better than the Hawks.
Well, I understand from that perspective, but Cam Reddish, like I said, I kind of just threw him in there for contracts. If they want to use him, then shit. I mean, don't use him if you don't want to. The Knicks never did. The Hawks never did. I mean, what other team is going to use him at this point? So maybe he'll be one of those players that were like, what could have been, because no one ever used the dude because they never saw him play basketball other than in college. So Cam Reddish isn't the main part. The main part is pairing Mitchell Robinson with Pascal Siakam. It would take a lot of defensive effort off of Pascal Siakam. Will allow Siakam to cook for his 25 points per game, which is crazy this year. Shout out to Pascal Siakam for putting up such numbers. I don't know. I understand your pause on Cam Reddish, but Cam Reddish wasn't the usable piece in this trade. It was more Mitchell Robinson.
I get that. Even Mitchell Robinson, bro. Like, we're talking about Robert Williams not being healthy. Mitchell Robinson's never healthy. He used to be in the starting lineup very much. And like I said, he didn't have many options when he was a free agent, so he had to go out to New York. So I think he needs to stay healthy. But for Toronto, I mean, if they want to get – I don't think Toronto cares right now. It's like they're like the Bulls. They don't know what they're doing with all their pieces. So, I mean, I like the move. And if they use Mitchell Robinson, I think it would be very deadly for them.
100%.
And they could get into the play-in.
I do agree with what you said about Malachi Flynn, by the way, because I think it was either the end of last year or the end of the year before where they were in the playoffs, or they were either in or out of the playoffs. I don't remember. But they sat all of their starters pretty much and let their bench players cook. And Malachi Flynn, I believe in the one game that I watched, put up like 32 points. And he is a solid player that, if developed correctly, could be their new starting point guard, which could potentially be the reason that Kyle Lowry, the dump truck himself, is in trade rumors. So who knows? I don't know for sure on that one. But I do agree with what you're saying. They're another team who has a player that could potentially be an all-star if developed correctly, who they're just not using. So I would love to hear your next trade.
Yeah, and then one thing to point out is Van Vliet sat out one game and Malachi Flynn still didn't start. I don't know who they started, but I know Malachi Flynn didn't. So it was like, what are y'all doing? For the final move that I thought of, it was a team that was